My mother tried to force my daughter to wear a dress from my ex Mark, then blamed me for ruining everything. After I refused and threw it out, she manipulated my 5-year-old, then called my husband screaming that I'd poisoned our daughter against her. In my formative years, a solitary principle guided our household: the conviction that family connections were paramount. This idea was reinforced during every family assembly. We held these extensive Sunday meals at my grandparents' residence monthly, with around 30 individuals attending. And each and every time someone inquired about cousin Jamie, the response was consistently identical. "Oh, you know, Jamie is always occupied with work." I was 28 when I encountered Jamie at the supermarket. It was the first occasion I had seen her in 13 years. She became completely pale upon seeing me and attempted to depart, but I grasped her arm and insisted we share a coffee. I mentioned how my 5-year-old daughter adored art, just as Jamie once did. It was then that she became distraught. She clutched my hands and implored me to never allow my daughter near the family gatherings. Then she simply fled before I could inquire why. I could not stop contemplating it. I began observing details I had never noticed previously. Vintage family photographs on my mother's mantelpiece contained peculiar blank spaces where someone had been removed. Jamie's designation never arose in anecdotes about earlier times. When I questioned my mother about it, she became quite defensive, stating Jamie had opted to abandon the family. But that explanation lacked coherence, as I recalled Jamie being an exemplary student with a complete scholarship to art college. Then Uncle Rob became inebriated at my parents' anniversary celebration and inadvertently revealed something. He claimed Jamie had shattered our family with her falsehoods. My mother silenced him swiftly, but I observed the glance they exchanged. I located Jamie on a social media platform and pleaded with her to disclose what had transpired. She was initially reluctant, but when I sent her an image of my daughter, she finally consented to meet. We conversed in her vehicle outside of a coffee shop, and she recounted everything. Uncle Mark had been abusing her since she was 8 years old. Uncle Mark, whom everyone cherished. Uncle Mark, who was my grandparents' favored descendant. She finally informed her parents when she was 15, and they convened a family discussion. My grandparents accused her of attempting to dismantle the family. They asserted that familial bonds were stronger than any individual issue, and that she needed to consider the repercussions for everyone. Her own mother instructed her to retract her statement. She asked if ruining everyone's existence was worthwhile. The most distressing aspect was that other cousins had privately come forward and admitted the same had occurred to them. Yet, they were too fearful of losing the family to publicly disclose anything. When Jamie declined to recant, they labeled her a fabricator and a seeker of attention. They literally expunged her from the family, removed her birth date from the calendar, and digitally altered her out of pictures, informing everyone she had rejected her scholarship and absconded. I remembered being 15 and my parents telling me Jamie was mentally unwell. I believed them. Everything began to align. Uncle Mark consistently volunteered for childcare duties at gatherings. He had offered to supervise my daughter. Last month, I discovered 3 other female cousins had mysteriously relocated over the years. I found my Aunt Sarah's contact number and telephoned her. She verified her daughter was also a victim, and the family had compelled them to leave when they refused to remain silent. The realization that truly impacted me was that Uncle Mark essentially controlled everyone. He financed my grandparents' medical expenses and had extended loans to half the family for their enterprises. My own parents had borrowed $50,000 from him to preserve their home during the economic downturn. It was then that my daughter made a remark that sent shivers down my spine. She said, "Uncle Mark's activities were peculiar." I located old home videos, and indeed, there he was. Always positioned near the young girls, always discovering justifications to be alone with them. At the subsequent family gathering, I arrived late and could not locate my daughter anywhere. Panic began to intensify as I searched room after room. Then I noticed Uncle Mark's study door was secured. I heard my daughter's voice inside, expressing a desire for her mother. I pounded on that door until he opened it with a disturbing smile on his face. My daughter was at his desk, coloring. He claimed he was merely instructing her in some specialized art techniques, just as he had done with me at her age. It was then that the memory surfaced, being 5 years old and alone with him. Something unsettling that I could not quite recall, but my physical being remembered the terror. I seized my daughter and hurried to locate my parents, dragging them into the garage, and demanded explanations. My mother hissed at me not to create a commotion. Then they confessed. They all possessed prior knowledge. They asserted he was unwell, but now managed. That they maintained a system of observers at every gathering to ensure he was never unaccompanied with the children. But no one had informed me I was expected to be vigilant. My father stated Jamie's parents had failed her by leaving her alone with him. that my daughter was secure as long as I adhered to the directives. My mother declared that tomorrow was Grandpa's 85th birthday, with 200 guests arriving, and Uncle Mark was scheduled to deliver the toast. I could smile and applaud, or I could become like Jamie, ostracized, destitute, and isolated. The door opened, and my grandmother entered, inquiring if everything was satisfactory. She mentioned Mark was seeking me because he had a birthday present for my daughter. They all gazed at me, awaiting my reply. My phone vibrated. A message from Jamie, asking if I had removed my daughter from their influence. Then I heard my daughter calling from within the house, asking my whereabouts because Uncle Mark wished to show her something. I fled. My legs moved before my mind comprehended, rushing through the house toward my daughter's voice. She stood in the living room with Uncle Mark kneeling beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. My mother appeared behind me, clutching my arm with enough force to leave marks. I pulled free and lifted my daughter, who protested about the attractive bracelet Uncle Mark intended to give her. My hands trembled as I carried her to the vehicle. Behind us, my father obstructed the doorway while my grandmother called out about disrupting the party preparations. The journey home passed in a blur. My daughter prattled about coloring while I gripped the steering wheel tightly. At every traffic light, I checked the mirrors, half anticipating someone pursuing us. My phone rang incessantly. My mother, father, grandmother, unidentified numbers that could only belong to other relatives enlisted to bring me back into compliance. I pulled into our garage and remained there with the engine running. My daughter had fallen asleep in her car seat. Observing her tranquil expression, I comprehended why Jamie had fled, why all those cousins had vanished. The family mechanism would crush anyone who jeopardized their impeccable facade. Inside, I double-locked every door and drew all the window coverings. My husband would return from his business trip tomorrow. How could I even begin to elucidate this? Hello, dear. It appears my family has been safeguarding a predator for decades, and our daughter is his next target. My phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. A photograph of my daughter at last month's family barbecue. Uncle Mark stood in the background, observing her play. The message read, "Such a delightful child. It would be unfortunate if something befell her mother." I captured screenshots of everything and initiated a new folder on my laptop. Evidence. If they desired to engage in malicious tactics, I required leverage. I scrolled through years of family photographs on social media, now discerning the patterns. Young girls who smiled less as they matured. Cousins who ceased appearing at gatherings around the age of 15. My daughter awoke, requesting dinner. I prepared her preferred macaroni and cheese while she colored at the kitchen table. Every few minutes, I inspected the windows, perhaps feeling paranoid. But Jamie had cautioned me they possessed methods of maintaining control. After bedtime, I telephoned Jamie from the bathroom with the water running. She answered on the first ring. I informed her about the confrontation and the menace. She remained silent for such an extended period, I assumed she had disconnected. She elucidated their system, how they isolated anyone who voiced concerns, disseminated rumors about mental instability, utilized their connections to eliminate employment prospects. Her own parents still dispatched her birthday cards containing images of family gatherings, reminding her of what she had forsaken. I inquired about the other cousins who had departed. Jamie provided me with 3 names. Alexandra had relocated to Canada after her parents prioritized Uncle Mark over her. Victoria worked nocturnal hours to evade any chance of encountering family. Danny had altered her surname and still recoiled whenever she saw someone resembling him. Jamie offered to connect us all. Strength in numbers, she stated, but warned me to exercise caution. The family possessed resources and affiliations I was unaware of. Uncle Mark's finances influenced everything from the local police charity fund to the school board. I ended the call, feeling more ensnared than ever. Outside, a car engine ignited. Through the window coverings, I observed a familiar sedan parked across the street, my father's vehicle. They were monitoring me. The following morning, I kept my daughter home from preschool. I informed them she had a stomach ailment. In reality, I simply could not risk letting her out of my sight. We constructed pillow forts and held a dance party, but my mind raced through escape strategies. My husband telephoned from his hotel. I nearly disclosed everything to him at that moment, but the words became lodged in my throat. How does one explain that their entire upbringing was founded on deception, that the family he had been welcomed into was fundamentally corrupt? Instead, I requested him to return home early, stating I missed him. He chuckled and pledged to catch the earliest flight in the morning. 24 hours. I merely had to keep us secure for 24 hours. My mother appeared at noon with my spare key. I had forgotten she possessed one. She entered while I was preparing lunch, criticizing the untidy kitchen and inquiring why my daughter was not at school. Her tone remained pleasant, but her gaze was frigid. She reminded me about tomorrow's birthday celebration. How disappointed Grandpa would be if his favorite great-granddaughter was not present. How Uncle Mark had spent weeks arranging the ideal gift. How the entire family was relying on us. I maintained a steady voice and stated we would not be attending. Well, the family's system of observers to monitor Uncle Mark is about as reassuring as appointing a fox to oversee chicken counting while everyone takes turns ensuring he doesn't consume any. She laughed as if I had uttered a jest. Then she noticed my laptop open to the folder of photographs. Her expression transformed. She inquired what I believed I was doing. Before I could respond, my daughter rushed in, asking if Grandma had brought cookies. My mother's entire demeanor shifted. She knelt down and produced a bag of homemade chocolate chips, the variety she knew my daughter adored. She began discussing all the delightful surprises awaiting at Great-Grandpa's party. I positioned myself between them, but my mother had already sown the seeds. My daughter bounced with excitement about seeing everyone tomorrow, about the special present Uncle Mark had for her. My mother smiled at me over her head. Checkmate. I seized the cookies from my mother's hand and discarded them. My daughter's face crumpled, but I could not permit my mother to employ her favorite treats as instruments of manipulation. My mother slowly rose, her pleasant facade slipping to reveal something more severe beneath. She proceeded to the living room and seated herself on my couch as if she owned it. I followed, keeping my daughter in the kitchen with her coloring books. My mother examined her manicured nails while explaining how matters would proceed. The birthday celebration was not optional. Uncle Mark had already informed everyone about the special art set he had acquired for my daughter. People would pose inquiries if we failed to appear. I observed her fiddling with her wedding ring, the one Uncle Mark had assisted my father in purchasing 30 years prior. She reminded me about their loan. How Uncle Mark could demand repayment at any time. How my father's enterprise depended on agreements Uncle Mark had arranged. How my cousin's scholarship to nursing school originated from a foundation Uncle Mark controlled. My daughter appeared in the doorway, requesting juice. I rose to assist her, but my mother anticipated me. She escorted my daughter back to the kitchen, her hand firm on those small shoulders. I heard the refrigerator open, glasses clinking. Too much time elapsed. I rushed in to discover my mother displaying photographs on her phone to my daughter. Images from last year's birthday party, my daughter pointing excitedly at the inflatable castle, the pony rides, all the cousins playing together. I snatched the phone away. My mother gathered her handbag and keys, mentioning she had already purchased my daughter's party attire, size 5T, purple with unicorns, hanging in her vehicle. She would deliver it tomorrow morning, along with directions to the venue, the new country club Uncle Mark had helped finance. After she departed, I located her spare key on the counter. She had left it there intentionally, a reminder she could return at any moment. I tossed it into the miscellaneous drawer and commenced planning. My daughter needed to comprehend without being frightened. I informed her we were engaging in a special activity where we practiced remaining close to mommy at all times. I made it enjoyable, like follow the leader. She giggled and trailed me from room to room. I messaged Jamie, requesting the contact details for the other cousins. While awaiting her reply, I reviewed our financial situation. Without my employment, we had perhaps 2 months of savings. My husband earned a respectable income, but insufficient to cover everything independently. I had resigned 3 months prior to concentrate on freelance writing. Unfortunate timing. Jamie first sent me Alexandra's number. I telephoned while my daughter napped. Alexandra answered on the 10th ring, her voice guarded. When I clarified my identity and the purpose of my call, she became silent. Then she inquired if I was recording, if this was some family ploy to induce her to utter something they could exploit against her. I reassured her by sharing specifics about finding my daughter with Uncle Mark. She began weeping, recounting the years of therapy, the nightmares that still awakened her, how she had changed her name twice because the family continuously located her, how her own mother had signed documents asserting she was mentally unstable when she had attempted to caution her younger sister. Alexandra provided me with Victoria's information, but warned she might not respond. Victoria had constructed barriers around her existence, working as a nocturnal security guard to avoid typical social interactions. She resided in a studio apartment secured with 3 deadbolts. Alexandra had attempted to reach out last year, but Victoria could not manage discussing the past. I tried regardless. I left a voicemail explaining the predicament. I mentioned my daughter's age, how I required guidance on protecting her. My phone rang back within minutes. Victoria's voice sounded hollow, as if she were speaking from a distant place. She instructed me to flee, pack up, and depart town. Do not inform anyone of your destination. Do not await your husband. Just go. But I explained about the birthday celebration tomorrow. How my mother had already set the snare with my daughter. Victoria laughed, but it sounded more like a gasp. She stated, "That is how they operated. They exploited the children's enthusiasm against us, making us the antagonists for safeguarding them." She recounted her escape attempt at 16, how she had confided in her school counselor, how the counselor had summoned her parents for a meeting, how Uncle Mark had appeared instead, explaining his niece's history of mental instability. The counselor believed him. Everyone consistently believed him. I inquired about Danny. Victoria stated she had completely vanished 5 years prior, changed her name, relocated states, severed ties with anyone who might connect her to the family. The last Victoria had heard, Danny was employed at a domestic violence shelter somewhere in the Midwest, utilizing her experiences to assist other women in escaping. My daughter awoke irritable from her nap. I prepared her snack while processing everything. 3 cousins confirmed. Who knew how many others remained silent, still entangled in the family's web? I considered my teenage cousins who would be at tomorrow's gathering. Brittany, who had just turned 13. Little Sophia, who was 7. Were they secure? Did their parents know to be vigilant? The doorbell chimed. Through the peephole, I observed my father holding a gift bag. I did not respond. He knocked again, called my name, stating he merely wished to converse, that Mom was concerned about me. The gift was from Uncle Mark, an early birthday present for my daughter since we might miss the party. I remained silent. My daughter inquired who was at the door. I diverted her with a film while my father eventually relented, but I watched him walk to his vehicle and sit there, engine off, waiting. I closed all the window coverings and relocated my daughter's play area to the rear room. Jamie messaged, asking if I was all right. I informed her about the surveillance, the coercion. She shared her own account of the weeks following her disclosure. Family members taking shifts outside her apartment, her employer receiving calls about her mental state, discovering her tires slashed, her parents appearing at her workplace with medical professionals attempting to have her institutionalized. She survived by documenting everything, every interaction, every threat. She compiled a dossier that would compel them to retreat. She suggested I do the same. Document the harassment, the manipulation, create undeniable or unalterable evidence. My phone's battery was depleting. As I connected it for charging, I noticed several missed calls from unknown numbers. The voicemails were from aunts and uncles I barely communicated with. They expressed concern about my conduct, hoping I would not spoil Grandpa's special day, reminding me of his contributions to our family. I initiated a document on my laptop, a timeline of events, screenshots of messages, photographs of my father's car still parked outside. My daughter played quietly nearby, occasionally presenting me with her drawings. One caused me to freeze. A depiction of Uncle Mark. She had drawn him with a broad smile and labeled him nice man. I inquired when she had drawn it. She stated Grandma had assisted her yesterday when I was in the bathroom. She suggested she create something special for Uncle Mark since he provided the finest presents. My stomach churned. The grooming had already commenced, and I had overlooked it. Evening descended with my father still outside. I prepared dinner, bathed my daughter, all while inspecting windows. She inquired why we could not go outside to play. I fabricated a story about impending rain, but the sky was clear. She was not foolish. Children always perceive when something is amiss. During bedtime stories, she inquired about the celebration tomorrow. Would there be cake? Would her cousins be present? I informed her we might do something different instead. Her expression fell. She had been anticipating it for weeks. Grandma had promised pony rides. After she drifted into slumber, I sat in the darkened living room, observing my father's silhouette in his vehicle. My husband would arrive at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The party began at noon. I had to make him comprehend in 4 hours what had taken me days to process. My phone illuminated with another message, this time from my Aunt Patricia. A photograph of the art set Uncle Mark had acquired. Professional-grade supplies in a wooden case, the kind any artistically inclined child would cherish. The kind that included private instruction from Uncle Mark in his studio. I recalled his studio, the converted pool house at my grandparents' estate, soundproofed for his musical pastime. One entrance, no windows, where he had instructed dozens of young girls in art over the years, where Jamie had spent hours every Sunday, where my daughter would be expected to go tomorrow. Another vehicle pulled up behind my father's. My Uncle Rob exited, carrying what appeared to be takeout containers. They were settling in for the night, ensuring I could not escape. I photographed everything from behind the window coverings. Timestamps, license plates, faces illuminated by phone screens. Around midnight, exhaustion set in, but I could not sleep with them outside. I brewed coffee and reopened my laptop. I began researching. I discovered old newspaper clippings about Uncle Mark's business achievements, his philanthropic endeavors, the children's wing at the hospital he had sponsored. All those smiling photographs with children. One article mentioned his spouse, my Aunt Linda. She passed away when I was 10. Cancer, everyone claimed, But now I wondered. She had been attempting to conceive children for years. Had she uncovered something? The timing now seemed suspicious. Right around when Jamie would have been 13, when matters might have been escalating. Purple unicorns and concealed car keys form quite the grandmother's arsenal. Nothing conveys a loving family visit like calculated manipulation and a side of surveillance served with chocolate chip cookies. I found her obituary. Survived by loving husband Mark. No mention of the sleeping pills. The family had concealed that detail. They stated the cancer had metastasized to her brain, causing confusion. But what if she had known? What if she had attempted to stop him and found no alternative but one? My laptop chimed. An email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line simply stated, "You're not alone." Inside, a message from someone named Rebecca, another cousin, one I had never heard of, born before my time. Erased even more thoroughly than Jamie. She had been observing our family from a distance for 20 years, awaiting someone else to discern the truth. She resided 2 states away now, married, with 2 children she had never allowed to meet their extended family. She had seen my social media posts about my daughter, recognized the peril, and had been attempting to determine how to warn me without exposing herself. Rebecca's narrative was more distressing than the others. She had been Uncle Mark's initial target, the practice child, before he perfected his methodology. When she had disclosed at age 12, the family was unprepared. The confrontation had been more chaotic. Law enforcement was nearly involved. It was then that Uncle Mark had commenced distributing his funds, purchasing silence and allegiance. She attached photographs, vintage family pictures from before my era. Her face meticulously excised from group shots, but she had preserved the originals. Uncle Mark appeared younger, but with the same predatory smile, always touching a child's shoulder, always positioned near the youngest girls. I wrote back, soliciting counsel. She responded immediately, as if she had been anticipating it. She stated the sole escape was complete disassociation, no communication, no compromise. The family would exploit any vulnerability to reclaim us. They would weaponize our children's disappointment, induce self-doubt, promise they had reformed, but they never reformed, merely became more adept at concealment. She had heard about other victims over the years, whispers that reached her through acquaintances of acquaintances. The family had financed abortions, therapy, silence, whatever was necessary to maintain their reputation. By 3 o'clock in the morning, my eyes burned. The vehicles outside had not moved. I prepared more coffee and checked on my daughter. She slept peacefully, clutching the stuffed unicorn grandma had given her last Christmas. Everything in her room originated from family. The furniture Uncle Mark had purchased, the attire from various aunts. All of it now tainted. I began packing a bag, only essentials. If we had to flee, we would need to act swiftly. But where would we go? My husband's relatives resided across the country, but they would locate us there. Hotels incurred expenses we lacked. Friends would pose inquiries I was unprepared to address. My phone vibrated. Jamie again. She had been contemplating and had an idea. Her acquaintance managed a women's shelter one town over. Not for our prolonged stay, but they possessed resources. Legal advocates who comprehended familial abuse. Counselors who specialized in assisting mothers in safeguarding their children. Individuals who would not be swayed by Uncle Mark's contributions. I saved the number but hesitated to make the call. Once I involved external assistance, there would be no retraction. The family would completely close ranks. My parents would choose him over me, just as Jamie's had, just as all the others. 28 years of relationships dissolved. But then I considered my daughter's drawing. That broad smile she had bestowed upon Uncle Mark. How effortlessly they had already begun grooming her right under my observation. How many more opportunities would they receive if I remained silent? How many ways could they separate us at that enormous gathering tomorrow? Dawn broke gradually. My father's vehicle finally departed around 6 o'clock, likely to prepare for the party, but Uncle Rob remained. They had maintained surveillance until they ensured my attendance at that party. I prepared breakfast for my daughter, attempting to behave normally. She chattered about her dreams, about the pony rides Grandma had promised. I could not disclose the truth to her. I could not explain that Grandma was complicit in harming young girls, that great Uncle Mark was perilous, that the entire family she cherished would prioritize a predator over her safety. She was only 5. She deserved better than this corrupted heritage. My husband messaged from the airport. Boarding now. Can't wait to see us. I stared at my phone, struggling to formulate words. How could I summarize this nightmare in a message? Instead, I simply stated we needed to converse as soon as he landed. He responded with a worried emoji but did not press. 7:30. My daughter dressed herself in her preferred rainbow attire. She inquired if we could practice braiding her hair for the party. I sat behind her, fingers trembling as I wove the strands. She hummed a tune from her favorite film. So innocent, so trusting. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I observed my mother holding a garment bag, the purple unicorn dress. She knocked again, calling out that she knew I was awake. My daughter heard her voice and ran for the door before I could intervene. I reached the door as my daughter was unlocking it, lifting her as she protested. My mother's voice emanated through the door, sweet as venom, informing my daughter she possessed her special dress, that all her cousins were eager to see her, that Uncle Mark's surprise was even more remarkable than she had envisioned. My daughter wriggled in my embrace, reaching for the door, asking why we could not allow Grandma inside. My mother continued speaking, detailing the celebration. The petting zoo, the face painting, the treasure hunt planned exclusively for the children. Each word meticulously chosen to maximize my daughter's enthusiasm and my culpability. I carried my daughter back to her room, her cries intensifying. She did not comprehend why I was being unkind, why I would not permit her to see Grandma, why we could not attend the party everyone had been discussing for weeks. I felt like the antagonist in her narrative. My phone rang. My husband had landed early. I answered with relief, but my mother must have overheard. Her voice grew louder, telling my daughter that Daddy was home, that he would also wish to attend the party, that Mommy was merely fatigued and bewildered, that everything would be fine once we were all united as a family. I disconnected the call with my husband and messaged him not to return home, to wait at the airport, that I would explain everything. But he had already secured a ride, already en route, 20 minutes away. My mother would intercept him in the driveway, present her version of events before I could convey mine. Time was dwindling. I grabbed the bag I had packed, dressed my daughter swiftly despite her objections, informing her we were embarking on an adventure. She did not desire an adventure. She desired her party. But I secured her into her car seat, disregarding her tears. My mother stood by her vehicle as I reversed out. She did not attempt to halt me, merely observed with that knowing smile. She had already prevailed. My daughter was sobbing for her grandma. My husband was heading home to an unoccupied residence and a mother-in-law with a tale to tell. The party would proceed without us. But the inquiries would persist. I drove toward the address Jamie had provided me, the women's shelter. My daughter cried herself to sleep in the back seat. In the rearview mirror, I observed Uncle Rob's vehicle trailing at a distance. They would not permit us to vanish effortlessly. My phone erupted with calls and messages. My husband, confused and anxious. My mother alternating between concern and threats. Other family members dispatched to induce guilt and manipulate. I deactivated it, concentrating on the road. The shelter was 15 minutes away. 15 minutes to determine how to explain this to strangers. 15 minutes before my husband received the family's rendition of events. But I continued driving because behind me was a dwelling filled with tainted offerings and grooming disguised as affection. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also the prospect of security. My daughter might resent me today, but she would be alive and whole tomorrow. That had to suffice. The shelter's parking area was concealed behind foliage. Discreet. I pulled in. Uncle Rob's vehicle slowed as he passed. He would have to report back my destination. The family would know within minutes, but I was already lifting my sleeping daughter from her seat, already proceeding toward the unmarked entrance, already prioritizing her safety over their approval. Inside the shelter, a woman with weary eyes glanced at my sleeping daughter and guided us to a tranquil room. She presented me with intake forms, but I could not concentrate on the questions. My hands continued to tremble. Through the window, I observed Uncle Rob's vehicle circle the block twice before parking across the street. My phone remained off, but I knew the messages were accumulating. My husband would be home by now, likely receiving an earful from my mother. The birthday celebration would commence in 3 hours. 200 individuals anticipating our presence. Uncle Mark preparing his toast. The advocate returned with water and crackers. She sat opposite me while my daughter stirred in my lap. I attempted to explain, but the words emerged jumbled. Family party, Uncle, danger. She nodded as if she had heard it all before. She probably had. My daughter awoke, inquiring our location. I informed her it was a special place where benevolent individuals assisted families. She wished to return home. She desired her party dress. I diverted her with the crackers while the advocate made telephone calls in the corridor. Through the door's small window, I observed 2 more vehicles pull up outside. My father's sedan, another uncle's truck. They were mobilizing. The advocate noticed as well. She re-entered and suggested we relocate to a more secure section of the edifice. We followed her deeper into the facility, past rooms where other women sat with their own children, past a play area filled with donated toys. My daughter brightened at the sight of other children. The advocate stated she could play while we conversed. I observed my daughter joining a group constructing blocks so effortlessly. She adapted, so trusting that wherever Mommy took her was secure. The advocate led me to a small office and closed the door. She posed direct inquiries. Was there immediate peril? Had anyone harmed my child? Did I possess a safe place to go? I elucidated about Uncle Mark, the family system, the financial dominance. She took notes without judgment. She stated they had witnessed similar circumstances, families shielding abusers, employing money and influence as armaments, causing victims to feel irrational for speaking out. My phone finally completely ceased functioning. A minor blessing. The advocate offered to charge it, but I declined, unprepared for whatever awaited in those messages. She comprehended, stating I could remain as long as necessary to formulate a strategy. Through the office window, I observed my daughter playing. Another young girl had shared her doll. They were having a tea party on the carpet. Normal childhood activities, safe childhood activities, no uncles with peculiar games, no grandmothers with poisoned cookies. The advocate introduced another woman, a counselor specializing in family trauma. She sat with that same discerning expression, asking if I wished to discuss what had transpired. I found myself divulging everything. Jamie's caution, the confrontation, the surveillance, my daughter's drawing of Uncle Mark. She validated every emotion, the confusion, the culpability, the apprehension. She stated, grooming often commenced precisely as I had described. Gifts, exclusive attention, normalizing inappropriate relationships, instructing children to maintain secrets through activities and incentives. A knock interrupted us. Another staff member peered in. There were men outside inquiring about a woman and child, describing my vehicle, alleging a family emergency. The shelter possessed protocols for this. They had already contacted law enforcement to encourage the vehicles to depart. I panicked about my husband. He would be frantic by now. The counselors suggested telephoning him from their phone. Allow him to hear my voice, provide my location, but I hesitated. What if my mother had already persuaded him I was experiencing some form of breakdown? What if he brought my parents here? The advocate offered a compromise. She would telephone him, verify his identity, assess his mental state, ensure he arrived alone. I consented and provided his number, observing her dial from the desk phone, professional, calm, explaining she was calling on my behalf. I heard his voice through the receiver, confused, anxious. My mother had indeed filled his mind with narratives. She stated I had been behaving strangely all week, paranoid, keeping our daughter from family. The advocate maintained a neutral tone. She stated I was secure. Our daughter was secure. Would he like to come see us? She provided him with the address, but not the nature of the facility. She instructed him to come alone, park in the rear lot. Message when he arrived. He agreed immediately. 20 minutes away. The advocate ended the call and assured me she would screen him before allowing him entry. I returned to observe my daughter play. She had transitioned to dress-up attire with her new friend, twirling in a princess cape, giggling, being a child. The counselor joined me at the window, stating children were resilient. With assistance, they could recover from almost anything. My thoughts turned to all those cousins, Jamie, Alexandra, Victoria, Danny, Rebecca. How different might their lives have been with early intervention, with mothers who believed them, with families who chose them over their abuser. The advocate returned, stating several family members had been turned away by security. They had attempted various stories, medical emergency, a death in the family, custody documents. The shelter had witnessed every manipulative tactic. None succeeded here. Time progressed slowly. The birthday celebration would be commencing now. Guests arriving. Uncle Mark likely wondering about his special girl. My parents fabricating excuses. The family mechanism adapting to our absence. But for the first time, I was indifferent to the narrative they spun. My husband arrived. The advocate met him outside. I observed from a window as they conversed. His body language shifted from defensive to astonished. He repeatedly ran his hands through his hair. The advocate gestured toward the building. He nodded, followed her inside. When he entered our room, his face was pallid. He looked between me and our daughter, still engaged in dress-up. I witnessed the moment comprehension struck, the pieces aligning, all those family gatherings, Uncle Mark's interest in our daughter, my parents' insistence on attendance. He sat beside me without speaking, took my hand, squeezed it. The counselor provided us with space, but remained nearby. My daughter noticed Daddy and ran over in her princess cape. He lifted her, held her tightly over his shoulder. His eyes met mine, moist with tears. The advocate returned with alternatives, emergency housing support, counseling referrals, legal resources, all on a sliding scale or free. She elucidated our entitlements, how to document everything, how to establish boundaries, how to safeguard our daughter without involving systems that might not comprehend. My husband inquired about the birthday celebration. What would occur if we did not appear? The advocate stated the family would likely escalate before accepting our boundaries. Extinction burst, she termed it. the desperate attempts to regain control. We should anticipate calls, visits, flying monkeys dispatched to induce guilt. But we possess choices. We could stay with acquaintances, alter our routines, devise safety plans. The counselor added that we did not have to sever ties with everyone. Some family members might surprise us, choosing protection over complicity, but that was our personal decision. My daughter became hungry. The shelter possessed a communal kitchen. We consumed sandwiches while she colored with her new friend. Such a simple act. A meal without observing doors, without calculating seating arrangements, without Uncle Mark volunteering to supervise the children's table. The afternoon wore on. My husband's phone rang constantly as well. He allowed it to go to voicemail. We would confront the messages later, together. For now, we concentrated on our daughter, on maintaining her routine as normal as feasible, despite the disruption. The advocate assisted us in formulating a plan. We would stay with my husband's colleague tonight, someone my family was unaware of. Tomorrow, we would meet with a family attorney, commence documenting everything, construct our argument for requiring distance. As we prepared to depart, the counselor drew me aside, provided me with a card containing crisis numbers, stating the healing journey was not linear. There would be arduous days, doubt, culpability, perhaps even moments of desiring to revert to the familiar dysfunction. All normal, all surmountable with support. We exited through the rear. My husband had relocated his vehicle there. No indication of my family's vehicles. They had probably conceded for now, regrouping at the party, fabricating their narrative about my instability, my selfishness, how I had ruined Grandpa's special day. But as I secured my daughter into her car seat, she was no longer weeping for the party. She was not inquiring about Uncle Mark's present, merely chattering about her new friend, about the princess game they had played, about returning to play again soon. The drive to the colleague's residence was quiet. My daughter dozed off again. My husband reached over and took my hand. We would have to converse, process, determine how to proceed. But for now, we drove toward security, toward a future where our daughter would not have to navigate family gatherings like a minefield. My phone, finally charged in the vehicle, displayed 57 missed calls, twice as many messages. I deleted them unread. Tomorrow, I would compose a careful response, establish boundaries, clarify our stance. But tonight was for repose, for holding my family close, for believing we had made the correct decision, even when it felt as though we had forfeited everything. The colleague's residence was modest but inviting. She had prepared an air mattress in the spare room, arranged the couch, acting as if sheltering refugees from familial dysfunction was perfectly normal. Perhaps in her world, it was. That night, my daughter slept between us. Secure, protected, unaware of the storm we had endured. My husband and I lay awake, processing and whispering. He admitted he had also noticed things. He dismissed them. He assumed the family knew best. He pledged we would confront whatever transpired next together. I considered Jamie. I wondered if she had ever found tranquility after escaping. If the other cousins had. If Rebecca's children grew up free from the family's shadow. If healing was attainable after generations of illness. My daughter stirred in her sleep, rolled closer to me. Her small hand found mine in the darkness, held tightly. And I knew whatever we had lost today, whatever conflicts lay ahead, this moment was worthwhile. She was secure. She was whole. The cycle was broken. Thank you for reading this narrative with me. I will see you all in the next story.